this octagon of life. Together we will fight.
DDP's coach was saying that the referee should have done more in the fight with Khamzat Chimaev, which is kind of crazy. He should have actually done less. The fact that Mark Goddard stood up the fight was a bit nuts. Didn't see that happening, but DDP was instantly taken back down. The thing about the fight is once it hit the ground, the round was pretty much done, and it hit the ground so fast in every round. 7 seconds into the first round, 11 seconds into round 2, 11 seconds into round 3 also. In round 4, 22 seconds, and round 5, 23 seconds. So the fight hit the ground so quickly, and the round was done. Khamzat's performance was the equivalent of Mayweather punching and running, effective and dominant, but objectively boring. What many hardcores don't understand is once you've been a hardcore long enough, you go back to being a casual because you've seen every permutation of these matchups 50 times. That's an interesting take. You've seen it all, so what was once intriguing is no longer intriguing, and you just want to see entertainment and violence at that point. Going into the fight, I was more excited for this fight than any other fight this year. It didn't play out how I thought it would, though. What happened the entire fight, I thought would happen in round 1, and then I think it would even out by Khamzat slowing down a bit, so takedown D for DDP would be there, and it would be more of an interesting back and forth and more striking and stuff like that. But it didn't play out like that. What happened in round 1 happened the entire fight, so credit to Khamzat. That was complete dominance. Credit to DDP's toughness. He was dominated the whole fight, but still in the final minute, he's trying to win, trying to pull off a miracle submission and miracle TKO from Mount. So credit to him for hanging in there, but he essentially had nothing for Khamzat that whole fight other than the last minute. Some people saying DDP should go to Dagestan for 2-3 years and forget. I mean, the skill gap is so wide between those two that, like, he might have to go there for like 2-3 centuries.
For Dricus to come back from that and bridge the gap between him and Khamzat, that is a tall task.
Yeah.
It's a tall task because that kind of dominance, that kind of grappling dominance was not just a level. It was multiple levels. And it just didn't seem like he had any answer for that. I don't know who he brought in to train with him, but clearly he didn't bring in anybody that had that kind of skill.
There was a lot of upsets. As underdogs, a lot of fighters won at UFC 319. Lerone Murphy on the main card won over Aaron Pico. I thought Lerone should have been a slight favorite based on his experience, but he was the dog, but he still won. Tim Elliott also pulled through as an underdog, surprising Kai Asakura with the guillotine. Alexander Hernandez got the TKO finish over Chase Hooper as an underdog. Impressive considering the run Hooper's been on. And 2 of the 3 early prelims underdogs won. Drakkar Klose winning a close decision over Barboza. And Joseph Morales was a pretty big dog against Alibi, but he completely dominated that fight en route to a second-round triangle choke win. Kai Asakura just 8 months ago was fighting for the title. Now he's 0-2 in the UFC, lost his last 2 fights, got stopped by 38-year-old Tim Elliott, and Asakura may not even be in the rankings come Tuesday. He was number 15 going into the fight. With Khamzat beating DDP, now Roberto Soldic can no longer be known as the last guy to beat DDP. He's competing in boxing next. Some people want to see him compete in the UFC, but he doesn't want to. It's a money issue for him. He's asked the question from talking about going to the UFC to fighting a 50-year-old man, talking about Thomas, his next opponent, who's 48. Do you think that's the right decision? Soldic says, I'm on 1 championship right now, and I'm waiting for the next fight because I recently had one. And for boxing, the situation turned out like that because 1 championship allowed me to do that fight. I don't want to fight in the UFC for $50K and have to work as a waiter on Saturdays to pay for my fight camp. So whatever the UFC might have offered him, if they ever offered him anything, is not nearly enough for Soldic to cross over to the UFC, even though a lot of people want to see him fight there. It's a scenario that you sometimes see in MMA. The economics of the sport and the way the UFC pays just doesn't allow for the best matchups to take place. But one guy who had a similar opinion about the UFC not wanting to fight there because the money they offered him was Lo Saint Qaeda, but he changed his mind, I guess, to give him more money. He's a 2-weight champion in Octagon MMA, 16-1 record, 27 years old, and he makes his UFC debut September 6th at UFC Fight Night Paris. He'll be making his debut against Patricio Pitbull in the featherweight division. He's achieved a lot of success in the sport, Qaeda, at just the age of 27, but will that translate into the UFC? We'll see. He's fighting a former Bellator guy in the UFC. Pitbull's 1-1 in the UFC, lost his debut against Yair Rodriguez, but in his second fight, he was able to beat Dan Ige, so consequently, he's number 11 in the rankings. If Lo Saint Qaeda is able to win in 3 weeks' time, he'll be in the rankings in his UFC debut if he can pull off the win. Former Bellator fighters making their debut in the UFC this year have struggled in their UFC debuts, gone 0-3. Pico got knocked out in his UFC debut. Patchy Mix had a bad UFC debut and lost, and also Patricio Pitbull lost in his UFC debut. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all good fighters in other organizations are going to come to the UFC and lose their UFC debut. look at RDR, he came into the UFC and has been perfect so far. He beat Mearshart, beat Holland, beat Nickel, beat Whitaker, and now he's set himself up to being close to a title shot. UFC returns to Vancouver. Tickets are on sale this Wednesday for that October 18th show at the Rogers Arena. No main event confirmed yet, but it's expected to be Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Batista. If Batista wins as an underdog, he'd emerge as a new title challenger. He's number 8 in the division, and number 2 is where Umar Nurmagomedov currently sits. Recently, PFL chairman Don Davis says he wasn't happy with Ngannou not attending the inaugural PFL Africa show. I'm not going to hide it. I expected him. This is the part of the vision we worked for 2 years. I'm direct and say what I think. I'm disappointed, is what Don Davis said about Ngannou. Ngannou says he didn't attend the event because the lack of representation on the main card from Africa. Lack of representation being 0 African fighters on the main card. So that was his take on the situation, why he didn't attend. Some people calling Ngannou spoiled and entitled, and maybe siding with Dana White, saying that he's hard to work with. Maybe they're both hard to work with, Dana and Ngannou, and that's why they butted heads. But Ngannou's not coming to the UFC anytime soon, and he will continue with the PFL, but he wants to box next this year against Deontay Wilder. He's targeting that for his next fight. Paulo Costa calls out Khamzat Chimaev. He looked good in his last fight against Roman Kopylov, but he's nowhere near title contention, and he would be like a plus 50,000 underdog in that fight.
I'm coming for you. You can hide as much as you want, you know. I know how to fight you. You're gonna rush as you always do. You're gonna do your thing. You shit thing. You're gonna shoot on my legs. I know that. I expect that. I'm ready for that. But then, guess what? We have a 5 rounds. I'm gonna put you to pay for every time that you shoot on my legs. That's what my coach Eric taught me to do. I'm gonna make you pay, and then when you're back in defeat, I'm gonna hurt you so badly you want to give up. But I will not let you give up. I will hurt you until the referee stop that fuck fight. I'm coming for you. You know, I will defeat you.
Paulo Costa does not have a fight scheduled at the moment, but some upcoming 185 fights. This weekend, Kyle Daukaus comes in as a short notice replacement and takes on Michelle Pereira. That's in Shanghai, China. That's the card headlined by Walker versus Zhang. Bohayo and Nimavov headlined the September 6th fight night card in Paris. Abuz Magomedov and Joe Pyfer fight on October 4th in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile. Also on that card, you have Edmund Shabazian versus Andre Muniz. Yusri makes his debut in the UFC October 18th against Azamat Bakoyev. 1 week later, you have Junyong Park versus Ikram Alashkerov, also in the middleweight division.
In this octagon.